What are safeguarding principles and why do they matter for the field of community foundations? Follow 3 presentations that respond to the questions of what, why, and how.
Okay, now I hope you see the presentation now.
Yes, we can see it.
Good, great. As the 10 minutes given, I'm not going to tell you what the IPA is. You can look it up in the internet. We have on the website. I'm Mary Hallay-Witte, and I'm very grateful and thank you for being here to be able to speak here today. And I had this fantastic opportunity to get 10 minutes, talk about safeguarding. I could talk about them for 3 weeks, but I disciplined myself. Okay, what are safeguarding principles? Why would they matter in the field of community foundations? They are measures which are taken to ensure the safety and well-being. I hope now that my presentation will follow on. Yes. They are measures which are taken to ensure the safety and well-being of people at work, in an organization, institutions, or in your case, in community foundations. In addition to the protection, they also provide mutual understanding of how foundations deal with violence and suspected cases, for example, of sexual violence, to ensure comprehensive and effective strategies of protection. They are essential to ensure that representatives of foundations act safely and take on responsibility in order that staff and children and youth and all target groups of the mission are protected from harm, violence, boundary violations, and are supported in the case harm occurs. You will never be able to stop harm occurring at times. The central concern of safeguarding principles is the protection of children, young and vulnerable people, and staff within the foundation. Also, the principles respond with the different target groups in the local communities of community foundations they work with. Through this interaction, the foundation has an impact on the wider civil society. Why do they matter? Safeguarding principles ensure that foundations working with local communities have a comprehensive and effective strategy to ensure this protection. They specify that all those involved, including staff, volunteers, parents, and so on, are informed of their rights, their responsibilities about the relevant standards and procedures, that they know the structures within the foundation in order to create a safe environment for everyone. They give orientation about the mission, about the attitude, and they give confidence in the action of the institution. But it's more. Safeguarding in general, one can say, implementing safeguarding principles is an organizational development process. It is part of ensuring high quality work. Safeguarding principles foster professional team development, and they can support change towards a caring institution, and they foster communication and reflection in the case of occurring harm. They create an atmosphere of trust and respect for the rights of the staff and the target groups, especially of children and young people. Also, they enable being sensible for power abuse within the professional structures of a foundation. I would like to introduce to you some basic principles following the safeguarding policy of the Catholic Church in Ireland. The policy was developed by various representatives and governance bodies of the Catholic Church in Ireland in response to the numerous outstanding cases of child abuse becoming public. In Germany, we also have these principles in various dioceses and church institutions like schools, universities, care organizations, Caritas, hospital, and so on. As you can see in the center, you have the main value of creating comprehensive protection. Creating and maintaining a safe environment means the first principle states all organizations and individuals are responsible for creating a safe environment for children and young people, for those who we care with our individual institutional missions. This includes designing safe physical environments and developing standards and procedures and policies to minimize risks and protect people from abuse and all other forms of violence. Also to create a positive atmosphere and culture respecting boundaries. Instruments here are the reflection of the attitude, the reflection of culture, the selection of staff, careful selection of staff, risk assessment. Second, procedures for responding to suspicions, concerns, finding, or even allegations. If a foundation develops structures and procedures and clear processes for dealing with suspicions, concern, it has a higher quality of work that is done there. In addition to the adherence to standards and governmental laws for the protection of minors and of staff, it is important that all those working in the foundation have the necessary knowledge of appropriate procedures. In addition to compliance with standards and local or governmental laws, for example, child protection laws, it is essential that all those working within the foundation have the necessary knowledge of the relevant procedures or know where they can find relevant information. Also, having the knowledge of what can happen minimizes the risk. Instruments here are protection concepts, checking of background information of employees, determination of contact persons, and information management. Third, care and support for the complainant. In the case of disclosure by a person affected, the complainant or a victim must be provided with sufficient support. Herefore, training professionals in the psychological, psychotherapy, even in the legal field are needed. And in case of the church, of course, on the pastoral field. Counseling by children protection services and institutions also falls under this. 4, care and treatment for the accused respondent. The principle intends to ensure that the treatment of an accused is appropriate, fair, respectful, and standards and laws are adherent to. 5, training and support for the safety of children. Knowledge about violence, a feeling for the appropriate classification of a suspected case, and knowledge about possibilities for action and existing structures is not just there. It must be learned and regularly refreshed in order to remain present to all those involved in the foundation. With these principles, a foundation can ensure that employees, persons in positions of responsibility, and all those who are in contact with children and young people are regularly trained. This is because knowledge enables certainty of action and sovereignty. Instruments here are specific education and trainings online or in presence. 6, quality assurance of compliance with the standards. To ensure compliance with the standards, measures should be taken to ensure regular review. Quality assures also that all violations and anomalies are reported and dealt with appropriately, and that those involved are adequately informed and supervised. Through regular review and quality assurance of standards, foundations can ensure sustainable protection in their structures. Instruments are here continuous risk assessment, potential analysis, and evaluation. Why would community foundations need safeguarding principles? Why would it even matter for community foundations to have safeguarding principles? All European societies have bitterly learned from the abuse scandal of the Catholic Church. They have learned what happens if there is no safeguarding system in action. We as IPA believe that the implementation of safeguarding principles can also be a key task to the field of community foundations, since you are promoter of projects that meet local needs and fulfill the common good in democratic societies. Also, you aim for transformation of society. You engage in a wide range of issues and concerns of the people or the communities benefiting from your projects. In many cases, your projects are the area of youth, social, cultural, and democratic affairs and represent places where children and adults meet and interact with each other in a variety of ways. So community foundations can also be called to ensure that all people who take part in their funded activities and programs experience protection and caring environment. This experience will be taken back, or better, reaches out into the community of the participants' lives and work in themselves. So your work will reach out into society. Furthermore, it is about structures, hierarchies, and dynamics within the foundation itself, where staff and supporters are protected by measures. We know places where children meet adults, but also places where adults meet or where people work can be potential sites of violence and personal harm. These are often places we might never think of at first glance. Churches, sports clubs, schools, social projects and initiatives, possibly also those of your community foundations. Therefore, an awareness is indeed needed for the foundations at the managing level as well as beyond, to take on responsibility for this by taking measures to protect participants as well as their own employees from violence, abuse, and discriminations. Community foundations are therefore important actors in the field of social engagement, and through their work can contribute significantly to the promotion of social justice, education, integration, and the protection of people. Safeguarding principles should not be understood as a mere compulsory exercise because everyone needs to do it now, but is as a central component of responsible and future-oriented high-quality work. By implementing safeguarding measures seriously and sustainably, community foundations can show that you take the well-being of the people you support as well as that of your staff and supporters seriously. I would therefore like to encourage you actively to promote the implementation of safeguarding principles in your own projects and initiatives, always keeping well-being of those involved in mind. And if you're already doing so, keep on getting better at it. The key goals and components of the vision and strategy of 2030 in the German Alliance of Community Foundations can also be a catalyst into civil society and towards public actors. By this, we all can make an essential and effective contribution to transforming our society into a place where all people can live freely in peace and without fear of discrimination and violence. I do really and truly, this is a real Irish colloquial now, I really and do truly believe that safeguarding principles also have a sustainable impact of ensuring our democracy and our peace in Europe. Thank you for being able to speak to me. You must put on your micro.
Anya, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry, I thought I had done it. Thank you very much, Mary. This was amazing and very rich. We quickly switch now to Adam from the Community Foundation Hallay-Witte, who already knows about the impact that you can have as a community foundation. Adam, the floor is yours, and thanks.
Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. Mary's done a really good job. I think she's actually said almost everything I was going to say, so we might better get through this quite quickly. So I am Adam Lepardo from Community Foundation Hallay-Witte in Northumberland. I'm the Director of Community Relations, which covers a whole range. I oversee some of our grant making, our marketing and communications, but in this instance, I am also what we have here called the Designated Safeguarding Lead. Organisations in the UK, where you often have to have a designated safeguarding lead. So I am the person who ensures and works with our trustees, our staff, and others to ensure that our safeguarding is up to date, is adequate, is good, is followed, and that kind of thing. I'm a pretty new designated safeguarding lead, so in the questions I may or may not be able to answer them all. And I should also say, as Mary said, although we've had safeguarding in place for a long time in our processes, we are also going through a process of checking that they are still fit for purpose, that they still work for us, but also for those that we work with. So things, while the principles will probably stay the same, there may be ways in which we work which will change over the next kind of few weeks and months. So I echo Mary's point that having it is great, but keeping on top of it, making sure that it's up to date and use and works is very, very important. Oh, I'm not moving for some reason. Is that moving for you or not? If it might not be moving for me.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why that's not moving. Oh, there we go. Does that move now?
Yes.
Sorry. A little bit of context. You can look us up, but we are based in the northeast of England. We're a fairly large community foundation. We give out quite a bit of money, so we're able to do kind of a lot of work. But the context I wanted to give you that we are in an area where there are multiple issues around deprivation, and last year data showed that Newcastle itself, the kind of where I'm based, has the highest levels of child poverty in England. It used to be London, and we overtook it, not a race we really want to be top of. So there are some issues in and around kind of where we are, and that leads into why safeguarding is important. You've heard what safeguarding is, but for us, this is what we work to. This partly comes from government. Safeguarding means protecting people's health, well-being, and human rights, so that everyone, especially children and adults at risk, can live free from abuse, harm, and neglect. And I think it's quite important there that we talk about, when we talk about safeguarding, we talk about everyone. There are maybe different levels that we may require or may look at when it comes to children or adults at risk, but safeguarding is for everyone. And that is enshrined in UK law. There are a whole range of laws around the Children Acts, Social Acts, Carers Acts. So these issues are these points are enshrined in UK law, and we have to follow them, and also in our Equalities Act as well. So why? Well, I've just said, it is enshrined in law. It's important to us because, well, we have to do it. It is enshrined in law. Our trustees are responsible for safeguarding. They have a responsibility. It is outlined by our regulator, the Charity Commission. So although I am the lead and I see it on a day-to-day basis, ultimately they are the ones who are responsible. They're responsible for ensuring that our staff, so me as well, that other trustees and our volunteers are kept safeguarded. Children and adults at young risk with whom we might have direct contact through any programs or grant making we do, but also any members we have, and also our donors. We can be working with people, obviously, who want to give us money. A lot of our donors are older, so making sure that we are protecting and ensuring that we are working with them in the right way is really, really important. And as I said, the regulator also asks us, or empowers us, to be responsible for only funding organisations that have adequate safeguarding arrangements in place. So as part of our processes, we check that the organisations that we fund take safeguarding seriously. That can have its problems, and I will talk about some of the barriers towards the end. But I also would want to say that we're not a proxy regulator. We're not, the regulator asks us to do it, and we do it, and we think it's important. But actually, ultimately, we are not the regulator for it, and it's quite important to remind people of that. So the law, really, I suppose, is what I'm saying is we do it. Why is it important? Because we have to, but it is actually part of our values, and I think Mary touched on a lot of this. Our work here is to make a difference, to see our communities and our area thrive. So we don't want to see things like bullying or harassment or any other kinds of abuse in our team, but also from anyone in any organisations that we fund and that we support. We don't want our money to end up doing any harm to the organisations and the people that are making a difference on the ground. We give the money, but they're the ones who do the work ultimately. We want to make sure that those people are benefiting. And that's especially true in our area, where we have a lot of people who live with the experience of disadvantage and discrimination, and as a result may be at that higher risk of neglect and abuse and exploitation. So we want to make sure not only that we live and breathe it as an organisation, but the organisations we work with and support live and breathe that. And so we try to ensure as best we can that they take safeguarding seriously. So when we're implementing that safeguarding, How do we do that? Well, what do we expect from ourselves and our applicants? Well, we expect a commitment to protecting everyone, obviously, and we like to see that. We like to see how they do that. So that could be through things like policies. We have a whole range of policies, and our policies, and we would expect other organisations' policies to be publicly available. You can go to our website, we have them there, we will be reviewing them, but we want to be able to see them. We want anyone who needs to be able to see those policies to be able to see them. So if members of the public can act, they can find what the processes are, but also that they are kept up to date. And we check that they've been regularly reviewed internally, but also externally. And from our grantees, we also put a question in our application form asking them how they put them into practice. It should be outlined in their policy, but we also ask them a question, if there was an issue, how would you deal with it? Or have you had an issue and did you deal with it? We won't ever necessarily, mark people down because they've had a safeguarding issue. It's how they dealt with it. Did they deal with it? What was the process? What was the outcome? We want to see that they live and breathe safeguarding in the same way that we would live and breathe safeguarding. And we want them to see that they have those procedures, that if someone needs to raise a concern, if there is an issue, there are those procedures in place. And as well as, in our case, as well as our safeguarding policy, we have a number of other policies around whistleblowing, around complaints, around bullying and harassment that also sit alongside the core policy. And again, those are available from our point of view on our website. What we do say, though, is while we want to see that commitment from organisations, we don't give advice. We are not the best people to advise our grantees and our applicants on safeguarding. There are people out there who are far better at it, and we will signpost them to them. We are always keen that they attend training. We work with a number of organisations who provide training, and increasingly we are making grants to organisations to help them to go through that process of writing and developing safeguarding in order to really embed it in their organisations. So if an organisation comes to us and as part of their application fails the process because of their safeguarding, we won't necessarily leave them, that's it. We will then have a conversation with them and see, are there ways in which we can help them through different types of funding or different types of support we have to get their safeguarding up to speed and to get them to understand why we think it's important, but actually why it should be important to them. It's really, really important. Having said that, we have a lot of barriers. We kind of strengthened our safeguarding. I always get lost in COVID and I always have to add 2 years to everything. So maybe about 5 years ago, we've always asked for it, but we've got a lot stronger. And quite early on, we had a lot of pushback, people who we were asking for something that they hadn't necessarily been asked for before. Bearing in mind, a lot of the organisations that we fund are small charities, small organisations. Sometimes they don't have paid staff, they're working with volunteers. So any extra work or any perception that it is extra work can cause them issues. I asked the team here, what things have we heard? And these are just some quotes that came back. One of the biggest ones we get is, other funders don't ask for it, to which our answer is, well, that's an issue with them. We do, we should, and we do. We don't need it, it's not our responsibility. Yes, it is. It's everyone in society's responsibility. We should all be making sure that our communities are safe places for all of us, for everyone. The one here is, as I said, I'm the designated safeguarding lead. All policies should name one and should be able to be contactable, because how otherwise are you going to raise issues? Someone said they didn't like their details being shared. They didn't want to be contacted. Well, that doesn't feel like the spirit of safeguarding that we would want to see. We know everyone. There won't be any issues. Well, actually, most abuse takes place with people that you know, not with people you don't know. So actually, you just don't know what happens. Why do we need checks? A DBS check here, sorry, is a check for the police for people working with young people. Some of those organisations, if you work with young people, will need those in order to be able to work with young people. That we have to explain that, and it's quite worrying sometimes that we have to explain that as a requirement that they have to have. That's not us being difficult. They need to have it. And then why do we need training when there's never been an issue? Well, because you never want there to be an issue. Just because there wasn't in the past, it doesn't mean there won't be in the future. And if you are trained and prepared and ready to deal with it, you can. So I guess in summary, why is it important to us? Well, because we want to live in a fair, equal, safe society. We all do, as Mary said. And so we want to live and breathe that in our own safeguarding and ensure that we are doing what we should do, but also how can we as a funder with power, but also with requirements from regulators, how do we make that happen? And we've got policies and procedures in place, and we work with organizations to kind of spread that safeguarding message and ensure that we get it out as best as we can. Those barriers I talked about, they are getting fewer. That's what the team told me earlier on. We're getting fewer and fewer. People are beginning to understand it. They're used to it. Other funders are supporting it. What a couple of people noted was what's been quite interesting is some of the bigger organizations are beginning to push back because we're asking them for more detail, or we're asking them to better clarify, or to show that as they've got bigger, or if they are large, how they live and breathe that policy. Because actually what we don't want to see is someone who writes a piece of paper, puts it on a website, and that's it. We're always very keen to see how do they live it, how do they breathe it, and how do we live it and breathe it, and actually reflect back on ourselves. So we are going through that process at the moment of seeing and checking that we live and breathe it as well as we can. And maybe anyone's really interested, they can come back and check back in a few months' time and see what we've changed, because we want to make sure that we enshrine this work, but also make it easy and as possible for the people that we fund to be able to do it as well. That's it. I hope that was enough. Stop sharing.
This was absolutely rich and enough, but it's never enough, I think, because we all can ask thousands of questions, but we now have our third presentation to the how does a support organization help others and themselves to implement safeguarding policies? Ivana, it's yours now.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Ivana Markovic. I work in TRAG Foundation as the senior advisor for grant making, but I also have another role in TRAG. I'm also a designated officer for child safeguarding policy. And today I will share with you TRAG experience in developing and implementing the policy. And let me say something about the TRAG. Next slide, please. With more than 20 years of experience in grant making and supporting community initiatives, TRAG is currently the largest domestic grant making foundation, and at least 65% of our budget is invested in grant programs. So you can see some numbers. We invested so far more than 16 million of US dollars of direct financial support to large number of civil society initiatives, mostly in Serbia, but also in a wider Balkan region. And besides grants, we also offer technical support in organizational and strategic development, management, community development, advocacy, local resource mobilization. Next slide. So also, TRAG has been actively supporting community foundation development in Serbia since the first foundation was established in 2011. And in 2019, with the support of MOD Foundation, TRAG launched the program Our Local Foundation Community Has a Say, aiming to build the community foundation movement in Western Balkan region. So inspiration for this program came from our long-lasting experience of working in local communities, and so far we supported the establishment of 3 local foundations in Serbia, and currently the team is working with 3 groups in Bosnia and Herzegovina, helping them to develop local foundation in their communities. Next slide. So how we come to develop the policy? Besides working on capacity building on civil society organization that we support, we are committed also to our organizational development. And although TRAG does not directly interact with children as a part of its activities, we provide financial support to organizations that do so. And we understand our obligation and responsibility for protection of all minority groups, especially children who may be involved with or impacted by our grantee partners. And this was the first challenge for us to understand how we, as a foundation that does not work directly with the children, how can we to understand that there's always some kind of contact with children, and that's our mission is to do everything to protect them, and also to support others to have this policy. Next slide. So that journey was long, and it's ongoing process for TRAG Foundation. In 2015, we developed our child safeguarding policy, and initiatives for development of policy comes from the Oak Foundation. That is our partner and donor, and Oak gave us all kind of support for this, but also not some resources, but also time, which I think it's crucial for this process. Initial support also came from expert organization from UK, Keeping Children Safe, who provided us with training, handouts, and consultation at the beginning. And during that process, we had to consider our internal policies and practices, in our organizational structure, HR procedures, grant-making programs, capacity building programs, fundraising, communication, everything. Second, we had to learn about the national legal requirements when it comes to child protection, because safeguarding policy is based on UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and international child safeguarding standards, but each country has its own legal procedures that need to be respected, so each country has to develop its own procedures regarding this. Third, we had to make an implementation plan how to integrate all procedures in practice by TRAG and its grantees. So when the process was finished, we had a policy, we had the procedures in place that fits our organizational structure and programs, but still there was a challenge of mainstreaming the policy into the work of TRAG and also into the work of its grantees. So we had to think about strengthening the capacities of program team to provide independent support to grantees, but also to strengthen the capacity of all TRAG team to integrate the policy into each aspect of our work. And also we have to monitor and assess the implementation of the internal policies of our grantees. So we needed support for that. And this is why at the end of 2020, we engaged an external consultant to review a policy implementation and develop a plan for moving forward. So consultant firstly conducted gap analysis to show us what are the gaps in our work and help them how to address those gaps. And also she did a risk assessment of 4 aspects of our work and supported TRAG in integrating the policy into in our work. So now the next revision of this policy will be in 5 years from 2020. Next slide. I will tell you something about working with partners, I mean grantee organization and community foundation. We as an organization, we recognize now our responsibility in ensuring children impacted by grant making that are protected. So we are committed to that, to design and deliver all programs that are safe for children. And we want to take all steps to ensure that organizations we fund have safeguarding procedures in place to prevent harm and respond if some concerns arise. So that is why we hold our grantees accountable to the same standards as TRAG standards, and through our grant making, we pledge to provide support for them to meet these standards. Also, we build capacity of our program staff to assess safeguarding as a part of the overall due diligence process. So we maintain also open dialogue on safeguarding through the whole grant making cycle, including project administration, selection of application and implementation of project, as well in this reporting and monitoring. And we are trying to support our grantees to work on their safeguarding procedures. And this depends also on the capacity and development of this organization, because we work with non-formal groups, grassroots organization, but also the bigger organization that have larger budgets and taking care of their organizational development. So it's a different approach to different groups that we work. And the same goes to community foundation that we support. For all of them, if the process is the same, we organize a workshop to present track policy and procedures, then provide them with some practical tools, learning materials, and if they are interested, we help them to develop their own policy, but we are still not experts in that field that we can, provide them the whole range of support that they need. Next slide. So what is needed for effective safeguarding, according to our experience? Organization, culture, and leadership, I think, are essential for this. This means that we need to know where, when, and how, as an organization, we affect children. And also we, as a grant-making foundation, we have the responsibility, but also we have a power to raise awareness about it, to educate and support others about the importance of safeguarding. So all our staff and our associates need to understand that they have responsibility towards the safeguarding procedures and they need to understand how to fulfill this. So this requires constant communication of safeguarding and also regular training for staff to be able to follow the procedures. Of course, we have a lot of challenges in this process. Next slide, please. First, it was lack of awareness on violence or harm being done to a child. Majority of people that we work within the organization, with the organization that we support, they doesn't know about different type of violence. They don't recognize it. For example, psychological violence or neglecting the child are very hard to recognize. And most often when we talk about violence, especially physical or sexual violence, people will say that it never happened in our organization and that it's not possible to happen. So that's a big challenge. And also because of that, there is a resistance to change. Some staff members or partners may be resistant to this process or may not see the need for implementing the policy. And they may believe that organization is already doing enough to protect children, or they may not fully understand the potential risks for the children. So also there is a lack of knowledge. Some staff members and partners may not have adequate knowledge or training on child safeguarding policy, especially within organizations that have constant turnover of staff and volunteers. So that can lead to inconsistent implementation of the policy. And even that the policy is not implemented at all, even they don't have the policy. And also important thing is limited resources, because this process needs also funds to be implemented. This can be resource intensive, requiring staff time, requiring training, finance, and small organization that we work, grassroots organization with limited budgets may struggle to allocate sufficient resources to implement effective safeguarding policy procedures. So overcoming these obstacles requires commitment to child safeguarding from all levels of the organization. And this includes leadership support, staff training, education, resources, and regular monitoring and evaluation to ensure that policies are being implemented effectively. What we learned during this process, it can be summarized into 4 key things needed for the implementation of policy. These are motivation, opportunity to develop or have policy, resources, and commitment of the management. And these are interlinked, and only together can bring a change to an organization. And everything starts with the leadership of organization, board of directors or senior management team. And when there is a motive, the crucial is to allocate a budget for implementing these plans and procedures. And at the end, what we learned, that is a lot of advantages having a safeguarding policy, because it will ensure, first thing, that children are protected. Policy will ensure that children who are in contact with the organization are protected from harm. And this is especially crucial for any organization working with children. Also, organizations, staff, and associates are protected. They're having a policy demonstrates the commitment of the organization. It also ensures the organization is in compliance with any laws or regulation related to child protection. And also the reputation of organization is protected, because if organization prioritize child safeguarding, they are seen as a more trustworthy and responsible among other donors, among partners, and this can help to improve the organization reputation and increase public confidence in its work. So at the end, I will say, I'll just repeat that this is a long-term process. You need a lot of resources, and also it's never-ending process. Thank you.